So I'm Zach Maritas, I'm the CEO of Teamworks, and I'm joined today by Desiree Reed-Francois, the Athletic Director at UNLV, as well as Samantha Hughey, the Athletic Director at William & Mary. So, the topic we want to discuss today, early wins as a new Athletic Director. And I think not all wins are created equal. Oftentimes, external victories can be more impactful early on. When we talk about external victories, we think about things like revenue wins, brand, increasing brand equity, customer satisfaction. Talk to me about some of the early wins that you accomplished in your first few months on the job.
Do you want to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's such a privilege to be here, so thank you very much. And I'm so privileged to be able to sit next to one of my good friends and someone that I really admire. So thank you for having us. Building culture was our primary responsibility and my primary objective when I first got there. And one way to do that is really to listen and listen to understand. And so we did a lot of listening. But you asked about on the external side, and one thing that has kind of set us up for some transformational gifts a little later on was I asked for our development staff when I got hired on April 17th. And on April 18th, and this is not my original idea, I just copied it, right? But I asked for a list of our top 50 donors, and I made sure I called all of them in advance of my press conference. And I thought that was really important because I wanted to get to know them, I wanted to listen to them. And believe it or not, that paid dividends later because I was able to establish a real relationship. And we're still developing those relationships, but that led to some transformational gifts.
Samantha, what were some of the wins that you drove early?
Well, and I also want to thank you for having me. And it is, when I saw that I got to be with Desiree, it was terrific because we've really developed a friendship. Both became athletic directors within a month of each other, I think. So, and likewise, I wasn't able to call mine ahead of the press conference because William & Mary wanted to have some a little bit of a surprise, I think, even though it did get released. But I quickly was able to make some phone calls to some of our large supporters, not only financially, but our people who were really influencers as well. And that was important. It was important to me that the individuals who I knew, I was replacing someone who was a legend, who'd been there for 21 years and I've said this figuratively and literally, big shoes to fill. I mean, Terry Driscoll, an incredible man. And so getting to know some of the people and the history and tradition that was there at William & Mary was very important for me, both internally and externally.
So you both, as you speak about engaging with those top donors, folks that are probably very invested with your respective programs, what were some of the takeaways from those conversations? And where did you take that feedback in terms of setting an action plan?
For me, one thing that was great that I heard was how much they wanted to win, how proud they were of the institution, how proud they were of the student athletes that the institution grows and develops and what they've gone on and done. Because several of these people were student athletes themselves that have gone on to be leaders in industry and law and government and whatnot. But they really talked about winning, that they wanted to do that. They were so proud of the academic prowess of the institution, but let's get back to winning athletically as well. And I love that. We talked about excellence. We talked about the fact that if we're going to be excellent in the classroom, we're going to be excellent in our field and in the pool or on the court, what have you. And I was really excited to hear that because that was something that was important to me. And so just having that shared vision and knowing that it was going to take a group effort and it wasn't something that I was going to do alone. And I knew that I had these individuals who financially and otherwise were backing that vision. It was fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, similarly, but I also was very enthused that our coaches or that our donors wanted to win the right way, and they understood. And a lot of them were prominent CEOs in Las Vegas and beyond, and they understood what it was like to want to build an enterprise the right way, and they knew that I was going to have to come in and build a foundation. And so I really loved listening and learning from them, and some of my donors have become great mentors for me too, because they're pillars in our community, and they've built great, successful enterprises. And I thought, gosh, this is, and when we're the CEO of an athletic department, and that these jobs can get a little lonely, and so that's why I'm very grateful for friends like Samantha, and also our donors who are CEOs because they understand what you're going through. And so I've learned to listen and learn a lot from our donors. And then also another segment of our listening tour was our fans. And we created a whole plan, and based upon our fan feedback, and that was wonderful. I mean, now we have an all-you-can-eat plan, and everything from ingress, egress to lights, and you name it. Our fans had strong opinions, but I love that passion because that's what makes that's the engine that makes our enterprise go.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Another rule that I had in the first year was anybody who wants to see me, and this might be crazy because folks told me, don't do this. I made time, and especially with student athletes, but if parents wanted to talk, just to give them a platform and I wanted to listen because I thought it was important to understand the culture of the institution and beyond, and Williamsburg and beyond Williamsburg, was to hear from anybody who wanted to. And I got out, I said, I want to get me in front of people. I need to meet them, and I want to know, what did they want for William and Mary? It's not my athletic department. It's something that we're shepherding for the time that we have the privilege of sitting in that chair. So it was important that I took that time with them as well.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is you spent a lot of time engaging with the constituencies, your boosters, your alums, your fans that are going to drive the investment in your initiatives. And it sounds like, and that was the result of those early conversations, which is phenomenal. How did you both, when you think about key initiatives that you wanted to drive, how did you determine what to attack first? Was there a large problem that needed to be solved, or did you more kind of think, where are my strengths and where can I have most impact? What was your approach to that?
Well, I engaged, and most of us do this, but I did a SWOT analysis with all of our staff, and we have 242 staff members. And what I didn't anticipate and what I learned was that I wasn't going to be able to get it done in 3 months. That was crazy. And so those SWOT analyses, though, I read everyone's, and then I meet with everybody for 30 minutes one-on-one, because our people are our greatest resource. And our people need to know that they're cared about. And one way that we can show that we care about people is by listening to them. And so those SWOT analyses, they formed a really great, there was so many consistent themes. And so that's how we took that, and then we took all those themes and we made our plan from there. And that's how we established our collective core values amongst our staff. I thought it was really important that I didn't just dictate core values down, because Samantha's right, it's not my athletic department, it's not her athletic department. We're stewards and we're the guides for it for the time that we have the opportunity and the privilege to be there. And so I wanted those core values and that mission statement, I wanted it to be real, I wanted it to be simple, I wanted it to be something that we all could use as a guide for decisions. And then I wanted everything to be focused on the student athlete. And that came from that listening tour and getting to know our staff and getting to know about their hopes and dreams.
Samantha?
So I went about it a little bit differently, but similar theme, because I knew that the staff was something I wanted, as you are, there's so many people you want to meet with, but if you don't win the trust of your staff, and that takes some time. So the first thing I did is the night before I started, I sent them 13 questions. And it was everything from, who do I need to meet on campus in the first 30 days, to what's your favorite place to go get coffee and how do you take it? Because the other thing I wanted to do, as silly as it sounded, when I went to do those one-on-ones, I wanted to take them their coffee or their tea or whatever. Just something simple, because I wanted them to see I was serving them, and their time was important to me. But in answer to those questions, and then I read all of them. I don't have as many staff members, but I have a lot, and just took the time to read that, and themes emerged from that. And it really gave me the opportunity then. And then I said, what do you want to ask me? And so my first all-staff meeting, I took those questions, and I answered those questions for them. And then really just took from that what I thought we needed to go about first. Because to your question, was something broken? It wasn't. It had been running very well. And so what did they want to move the department forward, and how could I be of assistance to that as we did that and lead through that? So from that, we then decided we did need to go through a strategic planning process and visioning process, which we're just getting ready to finish. But I wanted each person in the athletic department to feel like they had a part in that. Now, not everybody wrote it, because you can't, that's impractical, but yeah. It was really important to me that they felt that they had a say in their department.
Well, and so, again, what I'm hearing from both of you is that a big part of how you developed your action plan was by really trying to, first and foremost, open up as many sources of input as you could, and then synthesizing that into a plan. But talk to me a little bit about the impact that just that process had on those constituents, because you're exhibiting a great deal of empathy. I think, from what I'm hearing, it must be something that's very validating to all those different constituents. But what was the impact on, you talk about I want to know what you drink so I can, demonstrate my service lead. I mean, that is phenomenal. What was the impact that you observed as you went through that process?
It was interesting. I had this conversation with someone this morning. Several of my folks, and this isn't casting dispersions, but they said, okay, well, we've not been asked that before, so we don't know how to answer that question. I said, great, well then come back to me. Because one of the things I wanted to was to empower them to feel that, I wasn't gonna necessarily do everything that someone thought, but it was important to me that as I made decisions, I had their thoughts in my mind. So I think it was very empowering for them, and they felt like they were being given a voice, and I think this is something I learned from someone early in my non-athletic career. Get to know the names of the people who you might not otherwise know. So I know when I walk in the door in the morning and I see Miss Ruby, I say good morning to her and I ask her what was going on for her weekend. And that was important because I don't know that anyone had ever asked Ruby, who empties our trash, what do you want from William & Mary? Why are you proud to work here? It was important for me to hear from everyone. And I think it did. I think it made them go, wow, okay. So, because what I've told them in all staff meetings is when we win championships, everyone played a part in that. And I tell our student athletes that, it's not just your coach, it's not just your athletic trainer, it's Miss Ruby. So make sure that you remember that, and I want them to share in that joy as much as our student athletes when they hoist a trophy.
Belonging, right? We all want to belong to something special. And I think in order to do that, like our job is to create an environment for people to be successful and belong to something that really, really matters. And so it was important for us in running a student athlete-centered athletic department. When I first got to UNLV, we had the athletic department, which is about 150 folks, and it's about a $40 million enterprise. And then we also have an entertainment side, and that's about 29 million, and that's another 100 folks. And so one of my tasks was to combine both units into one collective. And so I thought, you know what, I need to focus on the reason why we're doing what we do, and that's about the student athlete. And one way that we did it, and I copied this from the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey. And it was really interesting, and I geek out on like stuff like this. And I watched a YouTube where he was talking about how he would carry in his pocket cards of fallen soldiers. And he would put their face on the front, and then on the back it would be where they were from, the name of their parents, and like the date with which he called the parents to let them know that their son or daughter had perished, had died for our country. And he would carry them in his pocket, and because he wanted to always make decisions for what was in the best interest and think about those people that passed away. And I thought, my God, that's beautiful. And so what we did was we copied it, and we put we have 480 student athletes, and we put I gave out like playing cards to all of our staff, and they had a male and a female, and it had the picture of the student athlete, and then on the back it had their name, where they come from, their position, and then a fun fact.
Wow.
And so
That's great. I'm gonna copy that. That's okay.
Oh,
Awesome.
absolutely. and I wanted our people to know, about why we do it. And if just one person could, and like so Greg Maddox, like the Hall of Fame baseball pitcher, is on our staff. He's a volunteer assistant coach. And so somehow, like on my card, I got Chase Maddox, who's his son. And like Chase's fun fact is he would like The Rock to play him in a movie. And so I saw Chase on a baseball trip, and I was like, why do you want The Rock to play you in a movie? And he's like, how do you know that? But, it's just kind of fun. But I think it kind of really underlines the point that we want to make decisions based upon our students.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
It's incredible. I mean, it's a physical reminder of who we're serving and really who we're trying to create outcomes for. That's phenomenal. I think
we can.
I just copied it.
Yeah, we're done.
No,
but
no,
let's
no,
just-
no,
everyone do
no,
that.
no, no, no. I
That's
copied it from.
terrific.
No, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
So, again, I think, what I'm hearing is process of let's get as much input as we can. And that process gives you so much data that you can utilize to drive decision making, to drive planning. It's also a process that, really creates a lot of relationships that are necessary for then taking action. So, once you've gone through that process of forming the relationship with the right constituents, how do you then begin to drive some of the more difficult changes, some of those internal changes to processes, some of the things, talk to me about that process, because I think it's easy to only talk about the fun but there's always the hard, difficult. We've been doing it this way for a long time, and how do we drive that change?
So I'll take that one to start with. Yeah. So William & Mary is 325 years old, and I remind myself of that. You know, so it's not only, we haven't been doing athletics that long, but we've been doing them a very long time. And I inherited an incredible staff, and I look at it as an inheritance. Wonderful people, many of whom had invested decades to this place. And so I set out from the beginning saying, it's about William and Mary. We have to remember that. And if you lead compassionately, if you're transparent, and if you set the expectations early, if you restructure or if you do those kinds of things that that are inevitable, because change is necessary in many cases to move forward, then you can, once you've earned that trust of those folks, they know it still stings if you move someone's cheese, to use the book, but I'm confident that our people know that I'm doing it from a place for the institution and for the greater good with those student athletes at the center. And I've had to do that. You know, I've restructured some things, and I'm not comfortable, but certainly something I wasn't charged to come in and not move us in a direction that was going to be better for the student athlete. After we did it, I brought in my senior team. This was something that was really important to me, and I said, there's no agenda. I just need to know how you're feeling. And I even said, I'll leave the room if you need me to, but I want you all to talk about this and talk about what the future is and where are we going, and being part of that vision for them was really important, because you can't forget the human side of it. Mm-hmm. It's not like, it was interesting because I like you have donors who are Fortune 500 CEOs, and they're like, you just need to come in and do your own thing. Like, guys, it's not the same way, you know. And so it's not just a business where you are, you know, you're restructuring and moving people out. These are human beings who have invested a lot of time in our student athletes, and those student athletes care about the institution and care about those individuals. And so as long as you're transparent, you're honest, upfront, and you remember to lead with empathy and compassion, it's never easy, but it's doable.
Samantha said it so well, but really it comes down to trust. You have to have built that trust already with your staff, and they have to believe in you and believe that you have the best interest of them as people and the organization. So trust is critical. Transparency. I think we can't hide from the difficult decisions. Like I'm a little more introverted by nature, and my natural inclination is to be a little more introverted, but I recognize that in the chair that we're in, we have to spend a lot of time explaining and being visible, and also just sharing the details of what we're doing. And then the why. People have to understand the why as to why we made that decision. And, you know, I come from a family of teachers, and so my natural style is like, sometimes if you'll ask me what time it is, I'm gonna be like, oh, I love your watch. Let's talk about the derivation of the watch. And so like I geek out on that. But I do think it's important that we spend some time teaching and explaining, especially that first year and beyond, because people need to understand how it fits and how it impacts them, especially when we're new and we don't have as much time built into the organization.
And I'll finish, if I can just comment on that. One thing else, as you've learned, listen to people. You know, you listen, you explain, but you've got to move forward. You know, I've said often, I've got a lot of people who think I am, you know, the best thing since sliced bread. A lot of people who are like, you're destroying the very fabric of this 325-year-old institution. I can't listen too much to either. I have to stay here. And it's having colleagues like Desiree and other athletic directors who, you know, face the same things, and just stay true to, when you've got your core values and your mission, and you know what those are, it makes decision making so much easier. And I tell our folks, I'm like, what does this do for the student athlete? And anything that we do at some point comes back to, how does it benefit the student athlete? You
know, and similarly, when you make decisions based upon your core values, those difficult ones, like we've all had personnel challenges, and I remember I had a pretty significant one, and I made a decision, I made it quickly, and we put it into place, and it was an opportunity for me to really live up to what I've been talking about, and that accelerated that trust process and that culture so much faster than the mission statement or the core. I mean, because people started to believe. that, okay, if we have aberrant behavior, this is what's going to happen.
And let me just tell you, you crushed that one because the media was all over it and you handled yourself in the media and you did. You stuck to your core values and you made the decision. And I think you gained incredible equity in that.
Thank you.
Well, and what I'm, it's amazing how what I'm hearing from both of you, you put great effort in defining the why, and then everything, the core values, the what came from that, and that's what has given you incredible conviction to take action, without hesitation. Mm-hmm. That's what has, been a tool for explaining why we're making these changes, because this is our why, because because we've defined that clearly, and we were all a part of defining that, right?
That's right.
And I think that, and then the other thing that I keep hearing is this empathy, and which leads to trust, which, I think that's a huge part of, really creating buy-in, is understanding I do care about you. And in fact, I care about you, but I need you to do this even though it's very difficult for you.
Right.
What happens when you've addressed all those initial challenges and now you're starting to get into kind of a more, you've built that foundation, you've driven some of those really, big changes early on, and now you're starting to get into a rhythm. How do you make sure, much like a CEO who wants to have steady growth quarter by quarter, how do you do that as an AD? I'm
not there yet, are you?
I haven't finished yet. No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And how do you define growth? I think that's an important part of it, right? Because growth is not just revenue. Maybe it's growth in the outcomes we're delivering for our athletes. Maybe growth is things that are sometimes hard to quantify, right? But how do you do that?
I've told our folks, I'm like, it's going to be small steps. Again, not to keep saying 325 years. We are not turning a speedboat. This is an aircraft carrier. It's small pivots each time. And I'm like, find those. You asked about early wins. And I asked my staff that. I'm like, what are small wins we're making? Because each of those lead to something bigger. What are you able to do today that is going to put us on the course and get us going in the direction we need to be in? For me, that's what it is. It's determining what those small pivots are every day. I'm nowhere near. It's a year in, and I keep being told maybe by year 2 or year 3 you feel like you've hit that stride. But we're in athletics. Mm-hmm. You're always looking at that next goal. You talk to the greatest, whether they're leaders of this country, whether they're great athletes. What makes them really great is that they say, I'm not good enough yet. Maybe they've won championship after championship, but they say, what is the one part of what I do that I could do better? And let me work on that. And so I don't ever want to be finished. I don't ever want to, finish tweaking what we've got because somebody down the road's tweaking theirs, and we've got to make sure that we're moving in that direction. We talk about pursuing excellence in everything we do. And that's just not, that I tell our folks, that's not just on the field or on the court. That's walking across the sidewalk and you see a piece of trash, pick it up, because we need to be excellent in everything we do. And it's not just the big things.
Awesome. That's right.
And our culture is our heartbeat, right? And so you can never stop paying attention to your heartbeat because your organization is going to wilt. And it's Colin Powell had this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something about when people stop giving you problems, that's when you have a failure of leadership. And I really believe that. I want my folks to keep bringing me opportunities, and now I want them to be thinking about solutions as well, and I want them to know timing. Like 15 minutes before I'm about to go present for the Board of Regents, please don't tell me about this and But culture is so incredibly important, and like Samantha said, it's also about momentum. And we want to keep having those victories and then keep raising the bar, because all of a sudden we're going to look back in 3 years and we're going to be like, wow, this is where the bar was here, and now it's here, and we're just going to keep going. So we're all competitors, and we all want to keep getting better and keep pursuing excellence. Mm-hmm. So I think it's exciting.
So, as you talk about building momentum, one of my favorite quotes, it's a Lao Tzu quote, and he said, when a good leader's job is done, the people will say we did it ourselves.
Oh, I love that.
And
it's great.
So as you're building momentum and you're getting these victories, it's oftentimes really important that your team is feeling those victories and getting credit for their piece of the puzzle. And that's what empowers them to come back and keep giving great effort and keep pushing forward. So how do you do that? How do you make sure that there's recognition and that credit is given where credit is due across the organization?
That's so incredibly important, and because it goes back to that belonging, right? We all want to belong to something special, and we all want to know that we had a little role in that to move the organization forward. To help, how cool is it? And through athletics, we can educate and we can transform lives. And when you think about that responsibility and that opportunity, it makes you want to give just that little bit more, that next piece of effort. And so one way that it sounds really silly, but I copied it from one of my old boss from WIT, and he would start off all senior staff meetings with high fives, and where staff members would recognize one another. And you notice, right? People want to be recognized, and so I copied that, and we do that, and it's been pretty fun for us. And we do some recognition in our all staff meeting, and then we send out emails and notes to our staff. Like before we have any kind of release that's going to be department-wide impactful, then I make sure that our whole staff gets it in advance, because I don't want them to go home and their neighbor to say, "Hey, I just heard that you just hired a new softball coach," and they're like, "I didn't know that." So I want our staff to feel a part of that their voice and what they do is really, really important. And so we do all sorts of fun. We just balanced the budget for the first time in a while. And so we're going to, on the 2nd, we're going to go pass out ice cream to our whole business staff. We're all going to get out and we're going to take out ice cream bars and pass out ice cream. So we try to have fun. And it's a privilege, but it's also fun.
Awesome. Samantha?
Yeah, everything she said, and I know that we're getting close to our time, but it is. I want our folks to realize that you're not part of a business. This isn't an operation that we're making widgets. We are part of an enterprise that is preparing young women and men to go live lives of impact, and it's fun. And we get a courtside seat to that, right? We get to watch and we get to go see them do that. And so I try to remember to tell them to have fun. I can be loud at times and fun, and so I make sure that our folks, there's some days I'll just walk down the hall and I go talk to people. The other thing that's really important to me is when I get a note about something one of our staff members do, I read it in the next staff meeting. If I get an email from someone across campus, like we had this gentleman he's on our facility staff, and I got an email from someone randomly. He had stopped, this gentleman's daughter's car had broken down, and our staff member had seen it. He stopped, he helped her with the car, he waited till AAA came. He didn't have to do that. And also, he didn't expect recognition for that, but I made sure that everybody in the department knew about it and read that and said, "Thank you. You represent what we do." And it's important that our staff know that.
So I want to thank both of you for being here today. Just some phenomenal nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us here, and really appreciate you taking time to give some advice on how to get off to a great start when you're a new leader on a campus.
Thank you.
Thank you.